Hello everybody, it's Claire here from Sewing by Claire, and today we're going to have a go at making some of our own designed cards. And these can be a really cost-effective alternative to store-bought cards, but the extra investment is your time, and that's the one thing that we can gift to people, and we know that the gift of time is something that can't be replicated. So these also have been inspired by the two cards that I made recently, one for my mum and one for my really good friend Alison, who was 60 recently. And now it's the turn of my cousin Dawn, and it's going to be her 60th shortly. And so while I'm popping over to the UK this weekend, this is my last day before I travel, so I've got to get a wiggle on in order to get it done. But I know that Dawn is a very, well, I know Dawn obviously, she's very creative, and I know that she's really going to appreciate the time and effort that we put into making this card for her. So come with me and we'll have a chat about everything card making, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I'll timestamp it here as to where you need to jump into if you want to avoid some of my waffle. You won't be able to avoid all of it because that's just who I am, but hopefully you get to enjoy that too. And then at the very end I'm going to see if I can find some pictures of Dawn and I through the years as well, because we obviously have got a long history, and that's lovely to celebrate Dawn and her 60th and the card that we're going to be making for her today. But hopefully some ideas here that you can use into making your own cards, and you can have a go. And this I'm going to use numbers on the card front, and so this is a really good way to get into card making because you don't have to be a designer. All you need to do is just have a look and see which fabrics you like to put together, and you can have a really good example. And what I'll do is I'll do a quick back to the future here in order picture here, so you can see the card that I end up making that's all part of this video. So again, if you don't want to listen to all of the waffle, you can either jump ahead or you can switch off watching if it's not to your taste. Just remember though that there are going to be methods and techniques and principles that you can apply to any of your projects along this line. So it might not be a card, it might be a picture, a piece of art, wall art that you want to make and frame for somebody as a celebration of something, or for yourself just because. So there's tips and techniques with applique and with your lettering and with embellishing the card that will transfer across into other of your projects. So grab yourself a drink, a cup of coffee, cup of tea, get yourself a biscuit if you want to, and I hope you enjoy spending this time with me. I'll turn the camera down and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need some blank card. Now let me just get these out, sorry about the noise. You can buy these presets of blank cards from a lot of places. This one's from Paper Chase, 8 folded cards and 4 envelopes. That was £3.75, so that's going to be 50p each for a card. Well, if we know we're buying a nice card from the shops, we know we're going to be paying £3 or £4 for that, I would have suggested in the UK. So that's those smaller style cards. I've got some other ones here as well in red, which would be really nice for like a Christmas card type thing. A few envelopes here that I've saved. So this set here is by a company called Dovecraft, who make cards. And these ones here I think are 6-inch squares. Yes, they are 6-inch squares I've got there. So I've got them in plain white. I've got them in the craft, which is the brown card. And then I've also got cream. I've got polka dots as well. And then one of my personal favourites, don't know if it's that one or not, but somewhere I've got some pearlised card as well, and that is one of my favourite ones to use. So these cards here give you a nice selection. The 6x6 size I think is really nice. It's not so small that you've got to make it's too fiddly to work with, but it's not so big that it's going to cost you too much then to post. I'm not sure what size these would post as, whether it's large letter or letter, but you'll have to check locally to see what yours are. I'm not in the UK anymore, I'm in Spain, so I'm going to hand deliver this, so that's why it's not a problem. But these ones here, which I picked up from my supplier, were these were £1.50 for 10 or 99p, but they needed to have a VAT added on, which is 20p. So £1.50-ish or less than £2, and I'm getting 10 cards. So again, that really brings down the cost of the cards, which I know can make a big difference. So have a look around and see what you find. So these ones come with the envelope as well for that price. Oh, is that my pearlised? That's my pearlised ones. You won't be able to see it, don't you? But these are really nice. You can get these ones. That is, as I say, they are my favourites. Can I wonder if you could? Oh yes, you can pick it up there. Look, you can see how that is lovely on there. So they're really nice ones. Stop crinkling, Claire. So what I'm saying is, if you have a look around in the pound shops as well. Anywhere where they'll discount, places like The Works might carry these blank cards, or have a look in your shops or online and see if you can find any. And as you can see, there's quite a selection. I've got these square ones. That's my personal choice that I really, really like. And I'll tell you why in a second. But they are available to you and they're really cost effective to work with. So find your card of choice, and we're going to keep some of these out because we want to put those against our fabrics. So the next thing then that I want to talk to you about is we're going to use a fabric base, but we're also going to use some interfacing, which is going to make that fabric really stiff. So let me get that to show you. Okay, so I've got some interfacing here. So the one that I like to use is this really stiff one. I haven't got a code for it, unfortunately, but hopefully you can see there that it's got quite a stiffness to it, and it really is quite cardboard-like, and that's what I want for the background fabric to be. It's got to be adhered to, but we use heat because it's got these little dots on. Hopefully you can see those little dots on there, and that's actually glue, hard glue, and then when you put the heat on it, the glue melts and then it adheres to the back of the fabric. So that's a really, really good one to use. I got it from my wholesaler, which is why I can't give you a code for it, but there are definitely interfacings online that you can buy where you can see that I mean, this is probably 1 millimetre thick, so it's really is quite thick. And also if you go into a shop and ask them, sometimes they can help you with that. The other thing that you can also use, this looks a bit dishevelled, but this is curtain header tape. And if you listen, you can hear how stiff that is. And again, for some things where you can, this again is heat. I mean, this I've actually recycled off an old pair of curtains. Then you can use heat again to bond this onto the back of your fabric, and it makes your fabric stiff, so it's easier to work with. So you're going to need some of that. You're going to need some double-sided sticky tape as well, because we're going to be actually attaching the design that we make onto the front of the card. Now I have stitched through the design before directly onto the card, but then you do see on the inside here your stitch marks. So that was the way I was doing it at first, but now that I've made a couple with this interfacing, I do like the fact that I can prepare all of my design onto the stiffened fabric and then use double-sided sticky tape to actually stick it onto the card front. If you've not got that, you could do a nice neat stitch all the way around the outside, making sure it's centred around your fabric and attaching your fabric to the card, and you could also do that, and that one row of stitching probably wouldn't be too noticeable. I mean, it's going to be noticeable, but it wouldn't be too off-putting or derogatory to your design. The fact that it's handmade gives you some license, I think, as well, but we still want it to be as neat as possible. So just bear that in mind, that you're going to want those types of things. The other thing is that you're going to need some fabric. Now, you can buy fat quarters of fabric, like, well, it's not fat quarters, it's probably a fat eighth or a long eighth. So that's probably a long quarter. So that's a 1/4 metre of fabric. So you see how much you get, quite a lot in there if you wanted to make that. Or sometimes you can buy a fat quarter, which is a square shaped piece of fabric like this one. And that gives you plenty of scope. This one's got this lovely cupcake design on it, which is really sweet. So that's another option for your fabrics. So this is about £4 in order to buy. The other thing that I really do like, and I'll show you why. So fat quarters are lovely to collect. Whenever you go to a fabric shop, bricks and mortar, I always try and pick up a couple of fat quarters and put them in my stash. A, because it supports the shop. If everybody went in for a browse, just picked up a couple of fat quarters, then that shop's got a few more sales that day, and that can make all the difference. But they're really good stash builders as well. You can also buy things called pre-cuts. So this one here, I think I've lost the label for it, I'm not sure where the label's gone, is a set of 40 10-inch squares. And these are called, this is called a layer cake. And this was a design, trying to see if I've got the details of it. I don't think I have. Not to hand, no. But this was a design, I think it was called East of India or something. But in this, when a quilt company release a selection of fabrics, then they will do a layer cake, Moda generally, will do what's called a layer cake and these pre-cuts, and you get one of every print in that collection. And the idea is that you can choose any two out of these prints, and they will, or more, and they will all blend with each other. So it's a really nice way of picking up a package of fabrics. I mean, these ones will be about £40, I think, for a layer cake. But they then also do smaller selections like these. So this one here I've been having great fun with. This is called Pearl by Ruby Star Society. And this one had 42 pieces of 5-inch squares. And so these are just the perfect size, if I can just show you with this one, to make for going on the front of a 6x6 card, which is why I like that square 6x6 shape. So you can see that at the moment that's quite flimsy, but what I'll show you in a bit is when we actually adhere the interfacing to the back of it, how stiff this comes, and it becomes a really usable work area, stiffened, for you to be able to sew onto. So 5-inch charm packs are fabulous, and you can go from getting them modern. I mean, these have got this lovely metallic element to them, which has been really nice in my card making. But then you can get whimsical ones as well. Look at these as well, with the flowers, with lovely greens and blues. And again, when you buy a charm pack, any two of these, all of these colours are the same repeated through the collection of the fabrics. So even if you went blue and green, there's still some of that blue on that green piece of fabric, which will match in with this because all of the shades are the same. So I do, again, a charm pack is another good way, as well as your fat quarter pack, of supporting a little business. If you see a collection that looks nice, and you can usually sort of leaf through them on the side there to have a look and see what's included in your colours as well. And there's the whole range of fabrics there, which will then blend. So they're really useful to do. And what I've done is I've chosen some fabrics for like an audition piece for my design. So I'll show you those, or just before we go, you can get all different ones. Look, all batiks as well, which look really stunning on a card as well. So again, you can get these are Maura batiks by Moda. And again, it gives you 42 squares. Again, that you can use, and you can see I've cut some off already and used them for other projects, but I just keep all the pieces together and then we can move forward. And again, here I've used where I've cut it out and interfaced on the back in order to make it stiffer. So this one here has got a piece of interfacing at the top here that's gone all the way across the back, and then that stiffens it. But also some of the fabrics can sometimes be a little transparent. So say I wanted to use these two fabrics to make my numbers on top. Can you see how that's showing? I don't know if you can see properly, but the colours underneath are showing through. And so if I put some iron-on interfacing, lighter than the thicker stuff that we've got for the backing, but just normal interfacing, medium weight interfacing for dressmaking, then it will just take away that transparency of the fabric, in order that then when you sit that down and you sew it on, you're not going to start and get the other colours showing through, which then looks like a discoloration on the top of your fabrics. Okay, so that's something else to think about. And also on here, these plainer ones, because generally speaking you'll get some what are called mixers and some plainer fabrics. These plainer ones, although they've got some motifs, in the gaps in between the motifs, I've used those with my pinking shears to use my stamp pad, a little bit of foil off, which is a stamp pad like this one. And these have got the little letters underneath, and then you use an ink stamp pad just to make your words. And then you can put little words on if you wanted to, happy birthday or what have you, if you wanted to put that onto some fabric and cut it out in a decorative and then sew it on. We're going to show you how this all builds up. At the moment it's just, I'm throwing a whole load of ideas at you and a whole load of information, but hopefully that passing on of information will set your creative juices flying, and you'll enjoy having a play around with this. This is a really great way for using scraps, and that's why I do keep a lot of scraps from my projects to one side, because they really are great for that type of thing. Let me just tidy my desk away for a second, and we're going to the other thing I'm going to talk about is letters next, and because we're going to use numbers, but you might use a letter for an initial, and the process is the same. So let me just carry on with that. If you watch one of my older videos, you'll have seen where I've shown you how to make a template for making some bunting, and then how we use letters that we cut out in fabric and then sew on the front of the bunting, and then we string those together and have those. So that's an older video, a much older video, but before I had a bit more practice. You wouldn't think I'd improve that much, but hopefully you'll think I have. So I've used these letters before. Now, if you're doing an initial letter for one of your cards, let me just get a piece of fabric here. Then what we need to be aware of, if you can see that letter through there, is how much space that letter takes on that piece of fabric. So if you just got an Anna or an Abigail in your family and you wanted to do a birthday card for them, then that kind of size is really good. So this is Arial. These letters are on Word. So this is Arial, and it's at size 325. Now, if your box doesn't go that high, just remember you can erase on your font, you can erase the size of the lettering from 14, 16, 18, what you're normally used to using, and you can actually free type in 325, and then your letters will come out this big, and then you can then either draw around it and embroider on it, or you have to then use these letters in a different way. Some letters are symmetrical, so whether you have it that way round or that way round, the letter is exactly the same. But so like if you had a Beatrice in your family, or a Becky, and you wanted to use the B, you have to remember that when you're putting it on the back of your fabric for making your letters for your cards, you actually need to use the reverse. So you would actually just trace around, put this up against a window, tape it onto a window, and then just trace around the back of it. So when you want to attach the letter onto the back of your fabric, you need to use something to stick it down. Now, people might have heard of Wonder Web, but you can also get sheets of this, which is it's like a mesh, but it's put onto a piece of paper backing, and the mesh is actually glue. So you can use this to trace off your letter backwards. Again, just pop it up against your light source and you'll be able to see through it like that. Remember, if you had that against a window, trace it off, because then when you have traced that off, you then attach it to the back, and when you attach it to the back of your letter, the letter is reversed. If this bit isn't making sense, I'm going to do it with Dawn, so because her letter isn't, her numbers aren't reversible, so it'll all make sense, but I was just trying to show you the principle of it, really, I suppose. So that's the letters there that I've got if you want to just do a letter. But the other one that I also traced off was some numbers, and this was by a company called Shiny Happy World, who had these free downloads. These are already reversed on the top for me, so I know that the 6 I can put the other way round and it's going to be fine. So when I trace that one off, I can just trace it off the top. Put down where to get the download for this so that you've got it. The letters you can just do online or on Word, and if you can find something on a screen that you can screenshot, you can also use that as well, and then print it off or bring it up on your screen. And sometimes you can put a piece of paper onto the front of your screen, and if you use a felt tip pen just to draw around it carefully, you won't damage your screen. So we've talked about the cards, talked about the fabric, talked about the interfacing, talked about your letters. Now we're going to audition the fabrics that we're going to choose. I'm going to choose, and then we're going to get started on actually making the card. Okay, so I've chosen some fabrics from my selections to have a look and see. We've got these from the Charm Packs, 3 different collections of the Charm Packs. I quite like this one because we did go for afternoon tea together for a few years when I was in the UK as a joint birthday celebration, because my birthday is quite close to Dawn's. And that's another one from the same collection, which has got a metallic. So I thought that one was quite nice, but it's quite a neutral, really, I suppose, in terms of the colour options on there. This is another one that I thought was quite nice, with that big floral print on the background, although you're not going to see too much, but with the numbers I'm going to put on it, you would see some, and then that's paler on top. And obviously we can inverse these as well, so we can have the darker number on the pale background should we wish as well. Don't forget that we can do that. And choosing is the hardest bit. This is the bit I find the hardest out of all of the process of making the cards. I do like a pink and a green together. I must admit that is one of my really great loves really in colour combinations. And then I've got this pink, and this pink's got the little green kisses on as well, which could look quite nice. And again, that could be inverted as well, depending on what background fabric we choose, card we choose. And then the last one that I chose was using the cupcakes, again going back to that afternoon tea theme that I had before. And I found this fabric, which isn't from the same collection, but the colours are quite similar on those dots to the colours inside the cupcakes, and with that paler yellow. And I thought, just to make a bit of a differential, I could always mount my letters onto the pink first and then put them onto the background of the cakes. So I'm just sitting here pondering, and this, as I say, I generally put 2 or 3 combinations together. In this case I've got 4, which was perhaps too many. I think this one I'm going to keep out because judging by these feel a lot more feminine to me and more what I would like to have for Dawn. So I'm going to put that one out of the way for now. And then have a little just think about these and ponder on about these, and I'll just keep changing them around. I'll go away, have a cup of tea and come back again to it and have a look and see what I think about the colours. And actually that background with that on there looks really nice, doesn't it, actually? So I might invert that and go that way around, but we'll have a look in a second. No, we're going to go with that one. We are going to go with that one. It is my favourite colour combination. The other thing that I have got to one side is I've got some beads as well. Look in this lovely pink and green colours. And I'm thinking I might be able to embellish it with a few of those as well. Okay, so I'm not going to give myself too much work because I want to get this video edited and uploaded as well for everybody as well. So let's just carry on. So we're going to use these ones now. So now we got those. Now I need to choose a card background to put it onto. I think the polka dot is going to be too busy because we've got polka dots on polka dots, and I think that for my eye is just making that a little bit busy. The pearlescent is my favourite, as you know, but that's going to be... Oh, those are the envelopes, but you'll get the idea from the card. So that could go on the top there with a little pearlescent on the back there. So I'll need to buy some more of those when I'm over, and those colours look quite nice. The other option is the craft colour craft card. And these do look particularly good for the mail cards as well. For some reason, they just really do go nicely. But that could also go quite nicely on there. Let me just make my mind up and I'll save it coming back again. You might have a favourite and be shouting at me, but I'm just going to have a quick choice and then I'll come back to you and we'll get started. Okay, you've guessed it. I went with the pearlised. I really just do like that effect. And we've got the pink. I think I'm going to use the pink as the background, the green as the letters, and I'm going to do some stamping with some of the letters on there with that's a little bit off-white, which will then work. I've got some beads that I can use to embellish should I wish. Again, don't forget with this you can go as far or as not as you want. And I've got my stamp pad for doing my letters as well. A little bit of foil on there is to just take off the excess ink before we stamp with it. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is prepare our background. So let's get our background square here. If it was creased, I would be ironing it, but it's not, so that's good. And I'm going to use some of my thick backing here. And what I tend to do, well, this is a very big piece. What I tend to do, move those out of the way, is whatever your background square is, 5 by 5 is perfect. But I don't want you to see the interfacing over the edge of these little serrated edges on the edge of where that's been cut. So I'm going to do it just slightly less than that. So I will use either a pencil or some scissors. So let's get our ruler together. So if I do that 4 3/4, so let me just come down to the bottom here with my ruler so that I can protect that. Just be careful, don't go too dark on your marks because we don't want to, where's my line? So you do want to be able to see it. 4 3/4, 4 3/4, 4 3/4 there. So we're just going to do a square at 4 3/4, and then we can cut this out so you can see how much we do get out of our pieces of our fabric. So literally, if you've got a rotary cutter, use a rotary cutter because that really does make this whole process much quicker and easier, but you may not have. And again, it's about using what you've got. I'm not trying to get you to go out and buy lots and lots of things, but you just do need 1 or 2 little bits. And I save these little offcuts in case I want to back something. So again, anything like this I hold on to. I'm very frugal with my supplies and save them as best as I can. So that is going to get ironed onto the back of there. So the knobbly side, the rough side, goes against the back of your fabric, and that's going to give us that nice stiff finish to it. But I'll show you that in a second. But while we're doing our cutting out, let's do it all together. So Dawn's going to be 60. So we are now going to use some of our mesh paper. Remember that paper with the glue mesh on it? And I'm frugal with this. And we're going to do what we can do to get this cut out of as small a piece of paper as possible. And again, I save my offcuts because you never know when you might need something. So I'm just tracing around the reverse of the letter that I want to use. Remember, I got everything all confused when I was trying to explain it. So this letter, this number is back to front at the moment, and that is how I need it to be. That's correct. So there's the 6, and now we just need to do the 0 as well. And I could hold this up to a light, but because my background for my cutting table is dark, I can see that letter really clearly. Oh, you can see too, look, I can see it clearly enough that I can actually go around this on this letter. I haven't got the letters touching. You do just need to not have them touching, but you should then be able to draw around that. So the letter, the O doesn't matter, that's symmetrical, the same both ways, but the 6 was important to get it just the right way around. And now what I do is I just rough cut these out around the edges. So don't have it right up close. I'll show you what I mean in a second when you're cutting this out. Just give yourself 1/8 of an inch margin around the edge, just a small amount. Can you see? Just leaving that little extra on the edge there. Take off any excess because we can use those bits elsewhere. You never know if you're trying to stick a berry on or something, you just need a tiny, tiny piece of this fabric, of this mesh. Smaller scissors, that would make this job very much more easy. And again, to go through the centre of the 0, I'm not going to do both of them. Making sure not to spoil. Just fold it in half and put a little snip. And then you'll be able to, I've got little snips here, let me use this. And then you'll be able to then poke those in and just take out the centre of this. If you want to, you can just stick it straight onto your fabric with the holes intact. And it just means then that you'll save that piece of interfaced fabric for something else. The other thing I am going to do is I am going to interface that fabric as well for the letters, because that will make it easier for them when I'm coming to. So this is to stick it onto this fabric onto that fabric, but because I don't want that to be see-through, I'm going to back this with some normal interfacing, which I haven't got to hand, but I'm just going to get some now, and then I'm going to take this to the ironing board. And we're going to stick these letters onto here, onto there, like that, get those in there. I'm going to use most of that 5-inch square, but that should look quite nice, I think, when that's all done. Plenty of flowers are getting incorporated, and I can move it around to make sure both the 6 and the 0 have got some flowers on them. And then we're going to stick these all together. So let me get my ironing board together. We've finished with the numbers now, so pop that away. And that would be the same if you were using a letter as well, don't forget. You'd be able to just use your letter instead, but exactly the same principle. Okay, so I've just got my wool pressing mat, but you can use your ironing table as well, that's all fine. We're going to start off in the order that we're going to use things. So let's now make sure that we've got the rough side that's going to go underneath to the wrong side of our fabric. And make sure that that's squared up so you can't see any of the interfacing anywhere around. I'm also going to I use a silk organza press cloth. You can use a tea towel or a piece of fabric, but that just goes over. I can see through the silk organza to make sure everything's all straight, and then I'm just going to use my iron and more of a pressing motion than an ironing motion, just lifting it slightly in order to press that onto the back there. It will take a little bit of heat, well, quite a bit of heat actually, in order to make that stick properly. Using a press cloth, make sure that you don't run the risk of accidentally having your fabric upside down and sticking it to the bottom of your iron. So let's do that. Let's just do it from the other side, because say this is interfacing is just so thick. We want that heat to really penetrate, to hold on to this piece of card, to hold it together for us. If you have a clapper, which is like a wooden tool for after you've ironed something, depends on what tools you've got available. I haven't got one, but you can lay that or put it under something flat, so under a book or something like that, that will just help that just stay nice and flat. So I've got that now, that's all done. That's the first little job done, just to make sure that stays flat. Don't bend it at this point. Back of the fabric for the numbers, let's just give that a press, make sure that's all nice and flat and ready to go. And then we're just wanting to position this so that we've got a flower, if possible, on both the numbers and both the letters. That works well for me. Press cloth again. This helps to show that we don't then move that while we're using it. And again, we're onto the back of the fabric with our letters, and we're just going to press that on. Once I've done a little bit with the steam, I'm going to take that steam off and just use the heat just to bond that on. Do you know what? I forgot to interface it first. How annoying. I've got it all ready here as well. Oh, it should be okay. So I was just going to use some ordinary interfacing from dressmaking to interface this first. But I forgot, so don't do what I do, don't forget like me. So just put this again to one side, just nice and flat, so that that can also just cool down and let the glue stick. This is a piece of the fabric that I've interfaced before, so that's got the stiffness on it there so you can see how stiff that is, and we're going to use this then to stamp on for our letters. So that's it for our ironing at this moment in time, so let me get that put away. Now that these have had a few minutes to dry, look how stiff now that fabric is now as a base for us to be able to use for putting onto the card. So that's just, you can see just how I've edged it up, just almost up to the edges on there. It's a little bit close there, but you can't see it on the other side, so that's fine. Might get a little bit of fluff off the edge, but don't worry about that, it's all part of the handmade nature of it. Okay, and then here we can see where the fabric's loose, where we've not put any of the glue interfacing onto it, but then look how stiff it comes in the middle where the letters are. So again, we are now going to cut around our letters as smoothly and as cleanly as possible. You can use pinking shears for this as well. So pinking shears are these here, where they give, where they give the triangular cut onto your paper or fabric. But for this, I'm just going to use these dressmaking scissors. Keeping to your line. And this is why we keep that edge on the fabric, because then your glue will go all the way up to the edge of the fabric, and that will help this to stop from fraying as well when the card is being looked at and handled and hopefully kept for many years to come. So that's that at the moment. Again, let's snip through the middle. So I've just put a little hole in the middle, and now I'm cutting out to the edge so that we can cut around our letters. Just try and make sure your lines are as smooth as possible. You don't want jagged edges. You could also use felt for these letters on these numbers if you wanted to, and then there'd be no risk of them fraying. So there's our 0 all cut out, a little bit of a jag just there. Smooth that off. So there's our 0. So I'm going to do the same with the 6, and then we'll see how those are going to start and look onto our piece of fabric here, look, as we start to build our card. Okay, back in a moment. So let me hold this up for you so you can see how this is looking. There's our letters, our numbers onto our card. So the next thing then that we're going to do next is work out our placement. Now we could have them side by side like that, right in the middle, and keep it nice and even, in which case then I would measure from the bottom here to make sure that those are together in that right way. I quite like them offset like that. It just kind of gives it a little bit of quirk. Only a very subtle change, but you could change it. I mean, you can have everything upside down. You can, you can do whatever you want. You could have it on the diagonal if you wanted, like that, and have it on the card going diagonally across. This is where you get to choose as to what you actually want to happen. But with this glue stuff, you can see that paper is on the back there and the pencil line that I drew. But if you just go to an edge, and on the very corner, when it's cold, you just fold the edge, then it should make a little indentation, and if you're very careful, the paper should separate off from the back of the glue. Just make sure it is without fraying. Yeah, and I can see, I don't know if you can see, but the glue was transferred now onto the back of the letter. So just carefully peel your letter off. I said we'd finish with the iron and we haven't, have we? And then we're going to do the same with the O. So fold it back and that should separate just right on the very edge for you. You don't want it to fray too much because you'd want it to be nice and neat. Let's get the iron back again in order that this can get ironed on, because this is what's going to hold it in place for you whilst you then stitch around it. Now you can hand stitch it, or you can do it with coloured threads, or you can just do that. I think we'll machine stitch it. I'll show you how to machine stitch as well. Okay, so that's how I'm going to have mine. So I'm happy with that. The O's are a little bit, the flowers on the O are upside down, I think, from the way I've done it. I could do it that way, couldn't I? Make the flowers the right way up. So we're going to get the iron out now. I'm going to use my pressing cloth again. Just make sure that when you put your, before you put your iron down, that everything has stayed exactly in the place you want it to. That's where the silk organza helps, because it takes the burn out of the heat, but you can actually see that it's all stayed in place. So I'm going to press this now with my iron, and then I'm going to come back to you and we're going to stitch these letters or numbers on before we then move on to anything else. Okay, so now those are stuck on there, just let them dry, but those are now stuck on there, so they're not going to shift for us whilst we're trying to sew around these now. So with these, you could use an embroidery thread. Let me just get some. I've got a collection of embroidery threads, these types of things that you can get. Obviously that green's quite a nice colour, so that might be quite nice for a little edge around there. I'll do a hand stitch in a bit, and you probably use that green actually, because that matches really nicely onto there. But you could use a pink to outline the numbers here. You could use whatever you wanted to, depending on what colours you've got available. You know, that one would probably look nice as well. So this is where there's so much you could use. I'm just going to try and give you, oh, now then, hold on a second, we've got some nice silver thread there. I wonder if I can get that through my machine, because that would be really... You see how my brain is just moved along? So I'll thread some of this onto a bobbin and see if I can use that on my machine. That would be good. I'm going to keep this green out because I think that green is going to put a really nice touch around the outside. I'll show you what I'll do with that in a minute. Okay, so let's get the machine set up and then we'll take it from there. If you've not got any silver thread, don't worry, you can just use ordinary dressmaking thread. Either choose the contrast colour, but just be aware that if you choose a contrast colour, you'll be able to see your stitches. So if you make a mistake, you'll be able to see your stitches. So whilst you're practicing, I would either use a white, perhaps for a neutral, or you could use the green in order to then match it in with what you've got going on here. So let me have a little look and see what I've got. Okay, so in the end, I have chosen, let me show you the screen against the card, which is like this very limey green. This is a great time for using all those weird and wonderful colours you've got, because I think that's going to outline those letters and numbers nicely. You might not be able to see it too clearly on there, but that should be able to outline everything nicely without it showing up without it letting the numbers fade into the background too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to, I keep catching my cable, sorry, my apologies. We're going to find a nice sort of straightish edge, and we're going to start on this 0 here first, and I am going to put it onto a slab. Now you can do a straight running stitch if you want to, which would work really well, and that is quite nice and easy to do as you're going round. Maybe we do that. Let's do that because that'll be probably the one that you most use. So we're going to sort of go a small, you're trying to stay as even as possible around your letters on this. There is a way of doing it where you do it more free motion sewing, where you can go a little more freestyle, but that can look a little bit messier. So I'm going to use a contrast thread and I'll show you how it looks, but bear in mind that if I was using a colour that was more closely attached to the green and not so dark, then you'd be able to see it better. Anyway, you'd be able to see it less. So we're going to sew. So we're going to turn our speed down on our machine so we're nice and slow, and we're just going to hold on to our threads for our first couple of stitches, and we're just going to start going. So we're trying to keep that sort of edge around the edge of the letters, and we're moving very slowly, and I'm just moving the card with my hand as I go. The other thing, if you've got the function where you can always have your needle in the work or in your fabric, do that. If not, you'll need to use, I'll show you, the hand crank on your machine to move that needle down into your work in order to allow you to pivot and change direction. So by pivoting, what we do is, as we get to a certain point, because a machine can only sew in one direction and we're going round a curve, we're going to stop sewing, we're going to leave our needle in the work, lift up our presser foot. We can now change direction without losing our place. Can you see that's held with the needle? We move the direction slightly. I'm going to put some glasses on so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Move direction slightly, and then we just take one or two more stitches. And when we're doing a card like this with curvy number, if you're doing a number one, then you're in heaven. But if you're just doing little stitches, like cards like this, where you've got curvy numbers, then we need to just take our time and literally just moving it a smidge at a time. You see how slow I'm going? But as you can, when I've finished, I'll show you, and you'll be able to see what a smooth line you can get by using this technique. And this is decoratively outlining the letters, but it also, with using this darker contrasting thread, it's just going to make them stand out a little bit more against the background. But as everything, there's a yin and a yang, isn't there? We need to make sure then that we're keeping the same sort of distance away from the edge of our letters if we can do. And I'll show you how to finish off invisibly at the end, so keep watching for that section. Machine's getting noisy, I don't know why, but going really slow, look. It's not liking something for some reason. Oh, my thread's got tight, that's why. So we're coming up to the join, so I'm going to try and line these two lines of stitching up really closely so that I almost finish in the hole that I started on, if I can. So once I've done that, put that needle back up again. Well, that's a pretty good join, and I leave a long thread on my stitches. Let me just show you that. That's the kind of stitching that we've managed to achieve. Oh, it's blurred for you. Round the outline. Can you see how it makes that O stand out much better now from that background? What we're going to do now, and there's my join, look, right on the edge, just in there. So it's almost right together. So what we're going to do then is you're going to need your quick unpick or a pin. We're going to turn over to the reverse, and then what we can do is if we pull on one of the threads that we've got, you'll see a little loop where the stitch has been formed, and you put your quick unpick through the loop, and you just don't use the blade, use the back of the quick unpick, and you will then pull that thread through from the front to the back. Leave it long, we don't want to cut it. So that's one come through. They are joined up, so that's fine. So then I go on to the other one now, so find the other thread that was coming through from the back. Just separate them out if they got tangled up. I can see the loop. If I just give it a little pull, I can see where the loop has formed for the stitch. It really is just there. And I'm going to put my point of my quick unpick through that loop, use the back of it and gently just pull it, and that will also then pull all of those threads through from the front to the back. Now we've got that done, we can now just separate out these threads, and I'm just going to tie them in a double knot, double or triple knot, it doesn't really matter, it'll hold it in place. So I've got 2 threads in one hand and 2 threads in the other, and then just do 2 or 3 knots just to hold those together. And then making sure that the ends of the threads are not going to poke out over the back of the card, just snip those off quite close. I'll just show you that. A little bit of fluff. That's just there, look, just a little knot just there. So on the front, I think you'd be hard pressed to know where we started and where we stopped. It was just round about here, but on the back there you can see your knots. So we're going to use that same process now. So I've got a little jig just there in my stitch where I changed too much direction, but I don't think you'll notice in the overall thing. I'm going to go around the inside of this 0 and around the 6 and around that 0 using exactly the same technique, and then I'll come back to you and we'll talk about what to do next. Now I've just stopped because I'm just doing the outline of the 6, and I don't know if you can see, but I've got a gap here between my start and my stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread my top thread onto a needle like that, and we're going to make up the stitch by hand so that it joins. So this is why I say don't worry too much about going too far. So I know I can go 1 stitch down into the bottom there, just like that. Just tighten up the threads from below just so that you've got a nice neat stitch. You can tighten those up later. And now I'm going to come up in this hole made by the needle for the stitch that I'm wanting to join it onto as much as I can. Keep it close. Good glasses help as well. So I'm going to go up here, and then I'm going to go across 1 stitch as well and go down the hole that I made for the other one. So I've joined that up. If I just pull those threads tight, hopefully you'll see. So you can see the hole at the moment, but once I smooth that down, hopefully you can see that on the end of that 6 now, it was just around about, it's that corner there, then that's looking pretty good now. So we can go back, I've already pulled the threads through from the other side, so now we can go through. I've got a very short end look, and if you've got a short end, just hold on to that short end and loop the others around, and then you can use the end of your quick unpick as like a little hook to lasso around those threads and pull them through. If it will behave for me. And holding, rather than trying to hold on to the longer threads and make the short thread do the work, then I've found that holding on to the short thread and doing the opposite tends to have a bit of an easier finish. Obviously if it's too short, then you can't do anything with it and you're just going to have to just snip it off. The reason we're tying these threads onto the back here is so that they don't then come undone. So yes, of course, if you wanted to, you could just snip off your threads and not worry about it, and yes, that would be quicker, but this is about creating a nice finish, and so we're wanting that to be finished off as nicely as possible. So just doing those little knots on the back there will help. So I've just got to do the circle here for now, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so that's where we are now with the card. Now, if you wanted to, and if you're short of time, if you get any frame bits off the edges here, just tidy those up. Then you could just put some little bits of double-sided tape on the back here, and then you could then attach that onto your card, and that would be perfectly nice enough for a lovely card. I hope you agree. I do tend to use a very, very thin micro marker, and I usually write on the back of here, handmade by Claire, and then I put for and then the person, so that they do, and then the date, so that they do know that it is a handmade card by you. Obviously you don't have to do that. Inside these cards is just blank, and you just put in whatever you wanted to. I'm going to carry on and embellish this a bit more. So if you just want to know about that technique, then that would be finishing off that card for you, and that would probably be good enough for a lot of people. But obviously, you know, I'm a bit extra. So we're going to do the extra. So first of all, I'm going to use some embroidery thread, and I am going to do a hand stitch around the outside of this card. So let's take a length of our thread. Let's make sure it's enough so that we don't have any joins, just roughly to go round, all the way around there with a bit extra. And then we can then choose how many threads we use. Now I want it to be quite thick, but 6 is too many. So these threads come in 6s. If you tap them on the end, they'll separate out so you can pull a thread. And the best way of taking your threads out is to separate one out and then pull on the end all the way through. It'll bunch up in your hand like that, but that's what it does. And then as soon as you've let go, it just all unfolds again. So do that each time you want to have a thread. So let's try 3 and see how 3 might look. So there's 1, there's 2. Just put them in a pile at the moment. You're trying not to let them get tangled, but it's easy in 2. But hold on a second, that one has tangled. That's the way I was pulling it out. Generally, they don't get tangled. These are very old threads though. So put that with your stash, and then let's find the end of these 3 again. 1, 2. Let's get the third one. It's here. Put the ends together, and then I tend to give them a little bit of a twist, just to sort as I smooth them down, just to put them together. That's perfect. That's going to be enough for me. So let's get our hand sewing needle again, and let's just thread those. You need one with a decent size eye to be able to thread your threads on. Let's go to the end here. Let's do our quilter's knot. There's a video on my channel how to do a quilter's knot. Okay. And then I'm just going to come in just a little way in from the edge and try and catch the interfacing. So let's start in a corner. That'll give us a good line to start with. And I'm just going to pull that through. I can stick that down in the back there so that stays down, so that's okay. So now I'm just going to do a small running stitch all the way around this card. Got to be careful that you don't fray the edges of the card already. Why is that doing that? Just pulled all the way through. That's it. And this is going to give that little hand sewn look to the edge of this card. Dawn does like to sew herself, so it's nice to be able to do this sort of thing. Just going to frame it, so I'm just do a couple more stitches. I've got quite a long piece of embroidery floss, which is why it's wanting to get tangled up. But just using that green on the pink there, I think is going to give that a nice edge. And that's my stitches there, just trying to keep them quite nice and even. And with these cards, you can go as over the top or not as you think your recipient might want to go. Or you can go as understated as you like. As I said, the card with just the numbers on would be fine, wouldn't it? And you could also use this kind of stitch to go around your numbers as well if you wanted to, or if it was a letter for an initial, then you could do the same to go round that without having to worry about anything else. And then you could call it quits. If you're also looking for some extra money, then, I mean, you could easily charge, you know, £3 or £4 for a card like this, depending on your area. And people will pay a little bit more, I think, for a handmade card. So long as it looks commercial and it looks neat and tidy. If anything's not neat and tidy, then you do just have to go in and tidy things up a little bit more to make sure that it's good enough for somebody else to buy. But the school gate is a great way to pass word round that you make handmade cards. You can get creative with the designs, whilst I'm suggesting that you just use numbers or an initial at the moment. Then of course you could also use a picture. If you find something like an embroidery picture, you can, or a picture in a magazine or a children's colouring book, you can also take images from there, trace them off with a piece of tracing paper, and then cut them out with your fabrics and use your interfacing and your mesh, that glue mesh, or Wonderweb, if you can get hold of Wonderweb, that used to take up hems, didn't they, in the 80s with Wonderweb quite a lot. Then you can also use that as well. This is also where you could use little charms. If you find those in the local haberdashery shops, you can use those. or you can use, I want to just do one more stitch before I turn the corner, I think. Or you could use bits of ribbon as well to decorate things. So that's how that stitching's looking. It's just giving a nice little edge onto the end there. Buttons as well. Buttons make lovely, lovely embellishments too. I'm going to do some more, I'm going to do some words and show you how I use the stamp pad for doing some words. Beads you can use. There's lots and lots of things that you can do with your cards in order to rack them up. Just remember, if you're trying to make them commercial, then you want to be aware that all of those the extra time of embellishing it is going to be costing you time and profitability, really, when you could be making another card. And you'll be surprised how quick you get at doing these letters. You could also do a zigzag stitch around these letters if you wanted to as well. That can be a little bit trickier. And I've also made some other cards that are a bit more art-like, so a bit more like a picture. So you can also, when I get this video up, which is the basic card video, then I'll do the other one, because the other one got a bit long because I was going into so much detail. So I held it back until I'd needed to do another card so that I could do this one. You know, you could do a little picture, couldn't you, with buttons, or put sew the little feet on. So I've got some buttons here as well that I picked up the other day that are music related. So if you've got a card for a man, you could always use your background like we've got here and some numbers if you wanted to, but then you could also put on whatever they like, whether they like fishing or golf or music, whatever. Then you can use those buttons to personalise it for their interests. Especially if they've got something that's a bit obscure, then you can obviously make that work for you as well. Let me just carry on doing this, and then I'll come back to you when we're going to do the letters, and I'm going to talk about adding some buttons and possibly some beads as well. So we're really going over the top with this card. I know Dawn will love the time that I've put into it, so it's time well spent. But for you watching, it's a bit boring watching me just do this running stitch, but hopefully you can see how nice that's starting to add onto the edge here. And then we can show you then how we add some more different decorations on in order to make this something really truly special. And it is a bit like a work of art. And at the end, if you want to watch until the very end, I've got some cards that Dawn has made. She's an artist. She does pet portraits, and she also does landscapes as well and watercolours. She's very, very talented. So it takes me all my time to keep up with her in the creative stakes, believe it or not. And so I will show you some of the cards that she's made as well, so that if you've got an interest in other creative pursuits, you could perhaps use something like that, or dried flowers, or I mean there's it's endless the ways that you can personalize and make these cards look nice. Okay, let me just do these other two sides and I'll come back to you. I've just got all the way around with that stitching, so in order that I don't have too many knots on the end here, what I'm going to do is just take up a few fibres of that interfacing and move that knot further in. So can you see my needle's just underneath some of the fibres? It's not going all the way through, so it just moves that knot away from the edge, and then we can just do a knot here, and then using the point of the needle keep that loop right down close to the end there, and then just snip that off. And I can take off the tail of that knot as well now, close to the edge. They won't poke out. So that's where we are now. You could embroider some flowers onto here. I have got some, where have I got? Oh, we're going to do the words, aren't we? And I've also got somewhere, and I put them to one side, some shell heart buttons. Here they are. So I'm going to try some of those against this as well, which I thought would look quite nice. There's little shell heart buttons. We can use those that way or that way, a little bit of mother of pearl. But that could look quite nice just on the edges here as well in a couple of different places. And the other thing is you can also, depending on the size of your card, you can also have some of these things just going off slightly off the edge as well, depending on what's happening, just to sort of make it, obviously you need to have enough fabric to be able to, but can see how I could sew that on just there, and the edge would be over the edge of this pink but not over the edge of the card. That can look quite nice as well to do that. But let's stamp some letters because that's really quite a nice little feature to use. So, ink pad. I've got a little bit of foil here. I've found that it just helps spread the ink around. This set I got from a place called Sostrine Green, put on the end there, was some time ago. This little set was only £6.28 at the time. So that was a really good buy because I've used it lots. I keep my ink pad in a plastic bag so that it doesn't dry out, and this is a crafting. Now this brand isn't available anymore, but there are others that you can get, and with this one it's a dark grey, so it's not so harsh as a black, but also if I pop on the back here, this is about the details for it, then you can fix it with an iron. So again, if you wanted to put it to name clothing and things like that, then you can do. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to definitely use the word cousin, so let's use that. I wonder if that'll fit across there, maybe. I'll use this wider bit. So I'm going to use this wider bit here. So where's my shears? Oh, reach them. So first of all, I'm going to just neaten up that bottom edge with the pinking shears to make it zigzag. So as you can see, the scissors cut that zigzag edge. Incidentally, if you were cutting out a square out of a fat quarter of fabric, I would use these on the edge to cut out your fabric so that it doesn't fray. Well, because if you just cut a straight line, it's always going to fray over the edge. But using pinking shears with these little serrated edge, it makes it a 45-degree angle, so it's never going to fray too far in. So let's do cousin first. So let's find our C. Just tap it gently on your print pad. You only want to get the letter, you don't want to get the surrounding area. I then dab it on my little bit of foil, and that just seems to help just set it up for success. And then we're going to then come in here, making sure your letter's the right way round. Don't wiggle it too much because you're going to get the edges of your stamp pad. So there's our little C that we've just done. Hopefully I'm on screen. Yes, I am. Let me just put the C. I tend to find it easy if you take these out one at a time and put them back in place. It just saves you from getting in a bit of a mess. So let's just add that. And you're trying to line these up. You do get better at it as you go along, but it does take a little bit of practice just to get this to go right. Anybody who makes the Luna Lapin or the Lily Rose Dolls characters, you'll know that I use these. How do you spell cousin? It's not like that, is it? Okay, so take that off and we'll start again. Good news is my word would have fit, which would be great. So let me put that one back in there. So let's try again. I was just about to say, those that follow my videos for the doll making will have seen me use this stamp pad to put little affirmations inside the characters, which are just little secret affirmations. Oh, U next, not S. So U first. And I know these are quite rustic looking. It might not be what you want for on your card, but this is where you have to just do you. I can show you these techniques and then you can just use it if you want to. Can you see how the ink pad there, I just touched it onto the edge? Not doing so well, am I, on this one? But for me, it just adds to that handmade quality. But if you don't like it, just start again. You know what, nothing will make you question how you spell something quite like stamping your own letters letter by letter. It really does make you think about it. You'd be surprised how many words I've started writing and then had to stop halfway through and go and do a quick check online and see how you actually spell something. So now we've got that word on there. I'm just now taking it down to a line that I like for the size. And there we've got our little word, cousin. So I can pop this in here. So that word could go in the middle there. And I'm already doubting how you spell cousin. I'm going to have to look at it because we are cousins. Or I could put it at the top there, or I could have it off the edge. So I'm going to do a few more words, and then I'm going to, oh, just make sure you don't put your card on your ink pad. That wouldn't do. And I'm going to do dawn as well. So let's find another place where we can, so dawn will probably be good across the end here. Take that edge off and take that edge off there. And then she knows it was personalised for her. I do know how to spell dawn, you'll be pleased to know. Make sure your letter's the right way up. There was something underneath that one. Right, I'm going to carry on off screen because I think it's the fact that I'm on screen that's making me go wrong. Obviously, you don't normally get to see my bloopers, do you? But today, you certainly are. So apologies for that. But then it just shows you that we all can make mistakes, and it's about not beating ourselves up about it. It's about getting ourselves out of it, knowing how to get ourselves out of it, and moving on. Dawn. Put the N on here. There we are. So there's dawn. I'm going to show you how I'm going to attach these shortly. So then we've got dawn, cousin, and we can put on some other little bits and bobs on here. So that will show you for how we do the stamp pads for now. Oh, not that one, this one. So let me go off and do the words, and I'm going to just finish off some of the design. I just want to do the final design off the camera so I can decide where I want to put things, but then I'm going to come back to you and show you how I actually then put these letters on in order to make it all work. Okay, back in a second. Okay, so this is kind of where we're going with the finish so far, like that. So just one button at the moment, but I'm going to put a little bit of sparkle on it with these little polka dots. I'm going to put some beads on there as well. So let me show you how to attach these little words then. So remember all those little bits of mesh where I said to you, don't throw them away. This is where we're going to use them. So like I've got a strip here that I've cut off from something else, and all I'll do is I will take a little bit that's just slightly narrower than the word that I'm going to be using, and I just pop it on the back like that with the glue side down against the back. Remember this fabric for the words was fabric for interfaced. That's the word I wanted. And again, another one here. Now it's going off the corner, so we don't want the stickiness to go off the corner, but we just want enough just to be able to hold it down. It's really important to make sure that you put the glue side down. So let's put the line in the middle of that one. Another one in the end here. And that's why I say I'm really frugal with my supplies, because yes, you could go and cut off another great big piece from your fabric, from your piece of mesh, but why not just use these? And where it gets a bit small, take the end off there, but hold on to that bit, and then I can do another piece here. And just keeping them in an ice cream tub like that just means that they just stay nice and neat for you and out of the way. So that's going in the middle there. So then I'm just going to use my press cap again. Iron's just heated up. Make sure everything stays in place. That'll move slightly, and that one's moved slightly. Just going to, and remember, all of this that I'm doing now is personal choice. You do not need to do all of this to make a lovely card. You could have just done the letters and the numbers on, or a letter, and just hand stitched around it if you don't want to use your machine, if you're not confident about it. And while we're here, we'll just press those letters in with the ink. And then what we can do then is if we take our little piece of fabric, our piece of art now, isn't it? It's more of a piece of art now. Let these just dry. So let's do So we're just going to peel off the back of that, and it should leave the glue on the back there, and I can see it has. So that one's going to go across the corner. And then this one's going to go across the other corner. So I've got the word special and cousin across the other corner, because she is a very special cousin. Just pull it in a little bit so it's not too far off the edge. And again, just use your press cloth. Oop, that one moved. Just keep your eye on it. That one's okay, so just press that down. And that will melt the glue from the other side then. And that will make sure that that will then stick in place, while again we're going to stitch around these. You could also just leave them if you wanted to, just as glued on. But I like to be a little bit extra, as you all know. So there's loved. Oops. Let's do this next bit for Dawn. Left room for the button to go on, of course. But this will just hold these down while we go to stitch them, so we're not having to worry about pins. Let's do this then here. Again, making sure that that's going to stick. Put a bit of steam in if we want to. Just penetrate through and just get those on. Okay, so we do need to let that just dry for a second or two. These ones should be done now, but can you see how I can hold it by that label now? And it's not pulling off. So those will all be the same now. So I don't need any more of these. So we really have finished with the iron. I know I've said that 3 times now. Okay, so now I am going to stitch around these now. I'm going to use a pink thread. I'm not going to use embroidery. I'm going to use sewing thread. Could use green again if you wanted to, but I just want to pull that pink in, I think. Do I want to pull the pink in, or do you want to use green? Let's use green. Let's use green. This is the trouble, you can change your mind as you're going round. So, got my machine all set up. Let's choose a nice straight edge. This time I'm going to use my needle across to the left. Okay, and I am just going to now, I think you can see, yeah, I'm just going to do a straight stitch across the top. I'm going to go all the way across the top in the edge. And then I'm going to stop and then pivot. So my needle's down into the work. And something telling me I should have used a... no, I don't like that. This is the design process for you folks. Just going to use my quick unpick. I'm going to use a neutral colour thread because I think it doesn't interfere with the letters then. Let me show you how that's looking. So that to me is not quite right. So I can pull that thread out. You can see the little holes, but we'll work on those in a minute if we need to. I have found with a little bit of water, especially now that that ink's set, that we can use a little bit of water and it will get it off. Let me just get my machine set up. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so we're set up again with white now, or an off-white. Now let's just try again. So I'm going to go right up to the edge before I change it. That's much better. It's letting the words actually shine, but still attaching them. Try and join your stitching up again if you can. And there we go, I feel that looks much better. So I suppose by leaving the bloopers in, if you like, it's just sort of showing you that the creative process is rarely straight. You know, we rarely see something and create it perfectly straight away. Normally there is a bit of to-ing and fro-ing, there is a bit of choices to be made, and it's only through making the choices that we then learn more quickly, I suppose, what we like to see and what we don't. and how you get better and quicker at doing something. So like next time when I'm doing the rest of these words, I'm just tying these on the back, then I won't make the same mistake with the thread colour, so that'll save time going forward. So that's that word there, just attached on there. So I'm just going to carry on. So I've got a little bit just fraying off there, look. I'm just going to just snip that off just close to where it is. You won't see that now. So I'm just going to put the other words on in exactly the same way as I've just done this one, and then we'll sew the button on, and then I'll come back to you. I'm going to put some beads on it. I'll do all of that, and then I'll come back to you and show you when it's finished, because I'm sure you've had enough of me rabbiting on by now. Okay, so I've finished with the words, so let's get the buttons sewn on. So for this I've got some embroidery floss, and I've doubled it up so there's 6 strands there. Just want that to be, do we want it at a jaunty angle? Same as the, no, I'm going to have it just straight, I think. So again, more design decisions. So I've got, holding it with my finger, I've got my needle, I'm going to go in from the top, and you'll see why in a minute. And I'm going to come up through the other hole. But I'm not going to pull my thread all the way through tight. I just want to keep that together. Oops, don't pull it off, Claire. Because then what I want to do with this, oh, maybe I do one more stitch. Maybe we just need that one more stitch just to hold it tight. So I'm just going to hold those loose threads down with my finger for a moment. Pull that through, make sure there's no loops in that top section. That'll hold it, make it easier for me to work with. And then back in where we were through the hole. There, okay, so that's going through. So take the needle off, and now I'm just going to do 2 knots with these loose threads on top, and then cut it short, and it should give a little tufty bit of texture into the middle of the button. Hopefully I like that. If not, I'll take it off and start again. There's a bit of a theme going on here, isn't there? That's like that. So let me just take this down quite short and rough that up with my fingers. It's just about adding detail, adding texture. So we've got a little bit there. I mean, obviously you could keep it neat if you wanted to. Just take it a little bit shorter, I think. Just got that handmade look, hasn't it, about it? And if you've got some fray check liquid, you could just put a little bit of fray check liquid in the centre of that, just to kind of hold those fibres together. So that's how that's still looking. Let me just do my beading, and then I'll come back to you. With the bead, you're best to pour a few into a little top, and then you can choose which ones you want to use and the colours you want to use, and then you can attach them on. We're just going to just do it the same way as before. Just going to come in from underneath, pick up a bead with my needle, got a green thread there, and then just go back in again, and then just move along to a different area and pick up another colour bead. And I'm using a milliner's needle for this beading, because that's the smallest one. They're quite nice, and so that's going to look like that. Now you might be looking at this and thinking, oh my goodness, that is just over the top, but that's how I roll sometimes. Do a green one here. So you don't have to necessarily like what I'm doing, you just need to be able to see how you can work with the different elements when you're working on your card, in order to feel like it's a representation of you or the person that you're making the card for, and that it just makes it that extra special for that person. So yeah, so I'm just going to carry on with these beads and then just cast off underneath, and then that's adding that little bit of glitter again onto there. Okay, back in a minute. Okay, so I've just finished adding the beads to it. Again, it's looking quite busy now, but I like it. So that's all good. So let me just show you. What I have done is on the reverse of the card, I opened it up first to make sure I got the orientation right, and I've just written handmade by Claire for Dawn, July 2025, and just put a little kiss at the end there for her. And then, because that's more difficult to write on once the card's sort of all compiled. So now what I'm going to do now is take my double-sided tape, and it comes on a roll like this, so when you pop it on, just put it across the corners. So just put some tape across the corners. Just be careful you don't snip your card. After all your wonderful hard work, you don't want to spoil anything. And again, a little goes a long way. So I personally don't do the whole strip, because what I've found is that generally doing this amount will work. But you do have to sometimes just put some pressure on your tape just to get it to adhere to the back of your fabric. Back of your fabric. Gosh, my English sometimes. Sorry, my apologies. Right, and then we can then lift up a corner, make sure that the tape is sticking onto the back of the... You can usually tell when you start to take it off. You can see the tape is just stuck on the back there, look. If it doesn't lift off, just use your finger again. And this is what I like about this method, because the back's quite messy now, but we're going to cover all of that off, so you're not going to see any of that. So let's put those bits out of the way. Make sure your card is the right way round and opening the right way. And then just hover your card, your piece of artwork, because it really is a piece of artwork by now. Try and get it as central as you can and as straight as you can. Use rulers if you need to. I'm just going to do mine by eye. And then let's just press it in the corners. I've got a little bit that's fraying there. Let me just snip that little thread off there. That's it. But give it some nice good press. If you've got longer, I'm flying tomorrow, so I can't give it any longer, but you could just make sure your fingers are clean before you start doing all of this. And then we've got our lovely card. So I hope that, oh well, before I round up, let me just check. So we've talked about interfacing your background fabric. We've talked about where you can buy your actual cards from and the types that you can get. We've talked about choosing your fabrics. We've talked about interfacing them. We've talked about how to attach your fabric onto your card so that it stays still for you using that mesh. We've shown you how to, I've shown you how to stamp words if you want to, and to put those on, or you could stamp directly onto your background fabric. We've talked about how you can hand stitch around your card if you want to. We've talked about adding your embellishments, like your little tufts of things and your beads if you wanted to do any of that. And then it's just really about how you then construct your card and put that together so that it all stays on. Obviously the other way that you could do this is you could sew directly through your cardboard and you could put your running stitch around through there, but I do like this way of doing it because I also think that this would fit nicely in a frame as well if anybody wanted to frame their card that they've got. And I think anybody who received a card like this wouldn't be able to miss how much time and effort has gone into making this card. And I think they're great. They're a fabulous palette cleanser at the end of a big project, just to make something nice and you know, something small like this and have a collection of them ready for you. And there are other makers online as well that you'll be able to see and have a look at, who will also be able to give you other ideas as to how you can take this and run with it. If I just show you a couple of others that I have done, they're a different style. I do like this style with the number or the letter. So this was another one that I made, which was a free form kind of one. And this one says "You deserve cake," so it could be a thank you card. And I've just free sewn and cut out and made a little cupcake and put that on there, fairy cake. Little bits of ribbon and little bits of applique from the embellishment there, same sort of words. This was a card for men. So again, we just used a bit of like chambray denim. I started to type it and then it's gone wrong, but I'm just going to take off the edge and then it'll be fine. A few buttons with that same tufty kind of wool and a little bit more embellishment on there. So if somebody was less girly and wanted something just a little bit more abstract, then that works very well with embroidery floss and little bits of fabric that are interesting. And then finally, this one was one that I made with a sea theme, for maybe for a fisherman or for somebody else. Got some glitter at the bottom there, and then 3 little fish, and then I've used little beads under this organza here, which gives that really shimmery, I don't know if I can pick, oh yeah, there you go, little shimmery kind of cover the whole thing. So it was a batik background that I've cut out with the pinking shears, and then I've used some wool to simulate the seaweed there and there, and I've just used a sewing machine on a zigzag stitch to stitch that down. And then we've gone over the edge here with the sequins and just sewn those on in corresponding colour, and cut out some little fish out of another fabric I'd got. And then there's, I don't know if you can see the little bubbles, but there's some little bubbles, little glass beads coming up from each of the fish as little bubbles from there. But again, all of these, you know, that shows you on the craft paper, just some ideas as to what you can do. And you can really personalise these and make them as lovely as you can. But if you're starting out and you say, I can't do that, I'm not creative, I'm going to suggest that you stick with the numbers. I mean, especially if it's like a 13th birthday or like a 22 birthday or something, then you can really make that personal each year, couldn't you, for them? Or do a letter and do their initial and then either embroider it or embellish it, and you could do that as well, and that would also make it very special for them, but also make it easy where you don't have to, you just got to choose two fabrics and you're done then, and a bit of thread, and then you're done. So it doesn't have to be quite so challenging. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for you. Hopefully, I'll tell you what, let me turn the camera around so I'm actually talking to you. Okay, so I have a journey into card making. Oh God, my hair's all sticking on. I look like a mad professor, don't I? My apologies. So I hope you've enjoyed making the card with me today. I'm going to say a really big happy birthday to Dawn as well. She'll have got this, and I'm going to post the video on the day after her birthday, so that make sure she opens it before she sees it, because she is a follower of mine. I'd get a lot of support from her. But what I did say is that I was going to pop some pictures up of the cards that Dawn's actually drawn, and I think you're going to be blown away by these. So this is one that I received. So Dawn has actually painted that watercolour, and then she's taken some prints from that and then put that together, and that's just gorgeous. And again, she signs on the back of hers. Look, that one was done in 2023. And then she's done this one here, which is called Glistening Sea, which again is beautiful. So if you don't want to be doing actually sewing, then you can, and you're a bit more creative in other ways, then you can do this way. And Dawn's got a Facebook account. Let me put it on there for you, www.facebook.com/Dawn, DAWN, Harold, HARROLD. So, Dawn Howard Artist, it says on there. So obviously you can have a look on there if you want to. I don't think she's got many at the moment that she's, these are in the UK, that she's selling. But she may well, if we ask her very nicely, this is from, this is Overstranding Chroma that she's painted. So you can see what I'm up against, folks. I mean, when you've got a talent like this in your family, then you've got to do something good, haven't you, when it comes to you. And this one is beautiful. That one says Autumn Gold. And again, that's all beautiful. So I'm going to leave it, well, no, I'm going to pop some pictures afterwards here of Dawn and I through the years, because I think that's going to be a really nice little tribute thing for me to do to her. And I do love her millions. She's so supportive of me and everything that I do. And when we have a phone call, you know, I'm throwing ideas at her, she's throwing ideas at me, and we're encouraging and empowering each other just to be the best that we can do, and just to keep going when it's so time consuming. But your absolute passion, then you just need some little encouragement sometimes. Just keep going, and she does that for me, and I hope that I do that for her as well. So happy birthday, Dawn. Hope you have a wonderful 60, and here's to the next 60 years that we're going to be friends and cousins together. And for everybody else, I hope I've inspired you to have a little go at doing some cards. They really are very fulfilling, and they're really quite addictive as well once you get going. So I look forward, if you're in my group, I look forward to seeing your pictures of your cards if you have a go. And if you're not in my Facebook group yet, the Sewing by Claire Sewing Support Group, then please have a look for that on Facebook. There is a link to that Facebook group in the channel. Just remember, there's just 4 quick questions. 2 are I agree or I don't agree, and then 2 are just free form. One is what area of sewing are you interested in particularly, just so I can keep everything relevant, and the other one is how did you hear about me. Well, you can just put YouTube, or do you know anybody else in the group, then you can also put their name too. It just helps me see where I'm being recommended from. But yeah, and then I'll be welcome you into there, and then you'll be able to post pictures to me, and we can liaise a little bit more easily, as well as to what you've made and how hopefully I've inspired you to have a go. But that's it for now. Okay, everybody, take care. Lots of love to you all, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really appreciate you all. Take care. Bye.